There are 80,000 registered rugby players in Fiji out of a population of just under 1 million. The Fiji Rugby Union was established in 1904 and they waited 119 years for their greatest historical win in the game of rugby. It came at Twickenham yesterday. Hello and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name's Mark. I'm a Kiwi guy living here in beautiful Cancun, Mexico. And right now we have a hurricane forming just off our coast. So all to our brothers and sisters in the western Cuban area, as well as Florida, batten down the hatches. Things are going to get a little bit nasty over the next couple of days. Now that's the end of my weather report. Let's start talking about some rugby. And yesterday at Twickenham in London, history was made, and it was made by the wonderful Fiji rugby team. And in this video, I'm going to talk about that amazing game. Fiji first played England at Twickenham in 1988, and they lost that game by 25 points to 12. But there were signs there, even on that day, that this Fiji team was going to be something special in the future. And of course, over the years, their Rugby Sevens team has ignited World Rugby Sevens and given us some of the most athletic and incredible performances that we've seen on rugby fields around the world, including at the Olympic Games. And surely it was to be expected that over time the Fijian 15 team would also make a significant impact, and boy, did they make that impact yesterday in England. Now I think it's fair to say that England have been struggling of late, and they were probably looking forward to a strong performance against Fiji yesterday, but always in the back of their mind they would have known that this Fiji team is very, very different than what they've come up against in the last number of years. And the reason for that is that Fiji are finally getting some strong competition, and their Drua team has been playing in the Super Rugby South Pacific competition. They've also been playing Fiji internationals in the Pacific Nations Cup. And all this new experience is leading to a new dynamic that's happening within Fiji rugby. It would have been really interesting to hear Steve Borthwick's prep talk before the players ran out onto the pitch yesterday at Twickenham, because I'm sure they knew they were in for a battle. One of the signs that the England team hasn't been going very well of late was just the smaller crowd of 50,000 compared to the 80 plus we saw against for the Springboks versus the All Blacks just one day before. And the weather decided to not play its part either. And to be true, we haven't seen much wet rugby so far in these warm-up games. So it was always going to be interesting when the rain came to see what impact that was going to have on the game. But look, the game kicked off and it was a New England team. For about 10 minutes, we saw some expansive play. And woe and behold, the English fans probably thought, okay, we finally got this. We're going to have a great open game of rugby and we're going to show our attacking skills. Well, unfortunately, it only lasted for 10 minutes. And even I got a little bit excited there in the first 10 minutes thinking, wow, can England keep this up for 80 minutes? But the answer was soon to be found out. But before that happened, we saw a penalty kick from George Ford and we saw Johnny May score a good try. And there were signs there that England had the potential to carry on with this game and make a big dent in the Fijians. However, what's happened of recent times is that Fiji, when they've got their backs to the wall, they don't capitulate like they might have done a number of years ago, and they stuck into this game and they started to make their way back into it. And after 18 minutes, Caleb Muntz, the first 5'8" for Fiji, got a penalty and brought the score back to 8-3. And at that stage we started to see a new strategy by Fiji being adopted and being very effective. Now the conditions were getting worse. It was raining very hard, the ball was very greasy, and it was a bit of a kicking competition there for a while as well. But every time Fiji had the ball, they seemed to be a little bit more visionary with it and know what they were doing. A lot of unity in this Fijian team. They're working for each other very, very hard. And you could see when they were under pressure from England on different stages, when the likes of Tuolagi and Lawrence made some good breaks, the Fijian defence was there in numbers. There weren't just sole tacklers going into the defence. So that's something that I really liked about the Fijians yesterday. They hunted in packs when it came to the defence. But for the rest of the first half, it was a bit of a ping pong game. Two sides really trying to feel each other out and try to get some ascendancy in the game. And that took away a little bit from the openness of the game. But you always felt that Fiji were in this game, and they were playing very, very good rugby, particularly in the forwards. Their forwards were taking it to England, and I thought Theo Dan was struggling a little bit in the front row for England. It was his first game in there, and you could tell he was under a lot of pressure from this Fiji pack. During that first half, we saw Warren Gatlin sitting up in the crowd, and he was taking a particular interest in this game, making his mental notes for what Wales has to do when they come up against Fiji in their group. Now, as we got to the end of the first half, Fiji unfortunately had an indiscretion at one of the breakdowns, and Ironi Maui got sent off with a yellow card. So that was in the 38th minute. And we probably thought then, well, England are going to take advantage of this with Fiji down to 14 men. And up until that stage, it had been a very even contest, and I'd probably give Fiji the edge, because when they were going forward through their forwards and doing that very good box kicking strategy, they were getting England to make mistakes. And I thought if they continued that in the second half, then the game was probably going to open up. A lot of energy expelled in that first half from both sides with tackles, and also a lot of forward play. So I was expecting that we were going to see some tries in the second half, and that the game was going to open up one way or another. Well, another thing that happened just before half time, that the Fijian captain Naya Salivu almost scored a fantastic try. It was unfortunately a forward pass that was deemed by the TMO, and it was forward, and that try wasn't allowed. But it just showed that Fiji were able to break that English defensive line, and they did it quite easy with their typical athletic and amazing offload procedure, and I was expecting to see more of that in the second half. Things I noticed in that first half was the Fijian halfback Lamani was having a little bit of trouble with his ball speed and getting it out to his backs. He was caught a number of times by the loosies of Earl and Laws coming through from the English side, and that's something that Fiji's going to have to look at as they go into the Rugby World Cup. And a number of halfbacks in different teams, I've noticed this, their ball distribution is a little bit slow, and loosies these days are extremely quick to get out of rucks and mauls and to get on the back of these halfbacks, and they need to make sure they clear the ball there. So that was just something that I noticed from a Fiji point of view in the first half. Really no standouts for England in that first half. Johnny May scored that good try. He probably thought this is the way he needs to get back into the team. He was there, of course, because Anthony Watson's got a calf injury and is going to miss the Rugby World Cup. So really unfortunate for Anthony Watson. But I don't think England did much after that first 10 minutes in the first half to give anybody any confidence that they were going to win this game. And it was going to be interesting to see for me when Marcus Smith came on, because I thought he's the only English player at the moment that really shows any vision and real energy to break this England team out of their current mode of playing. So the second half started and Fiji were down to 14 men, and as usual what happens when a team's down to 14 men, it seems to galvanise the rest of the players. And even though they're down to 14 men, and you would expect England would try to come out in the beginning of the second half and try to make something of that, well, it was Fiji that did exactly that. And Naya Salivu scored a fantastic try for Fiji in the 43rd minute, and then we really had game on in this match. So Fiji hit the lead at 10 points to 8, and at that stage we thought, right, what's England got here? This is what they're going to have to show in the World Cup, the ability to come back and win matches, that they're in a very tight situation. And there weren't really any standout players from an English point of view that seemed to be doing it for me. Mitchell at halfback was having an okay game, an average game. He was trying to get the ball out. Ford's kicking wasn't very good. He did a couple of horrendous kicks in play that didn't go in the right direction at all. And other than a couple of breaks through for Tuolagi and Lawrence, we didn't see too much from their centres at all. But Fiji were playing very smart. They were keeping it close to the forwards. They were using that box kick strategy very effectively and putting England under a lot of pressure. And then for me, what the critical moment of the game came in the 57th minute when Habozi scored a fantastic try for Fiji. And at that stage I thought, right, this is it. This is where we're going to see history made today. Fantastic play for Fiji around the 50-minute mark, and that's when we saw a lot of bench changes starting to happen then from England and also from the Fijians. But Fiji kept going, and really by having that lead of 17 points to 8, it put some wind in their sails, and you could see that the unity in the Fijian team was really bringing them together, particularly in a defensive pattern. And guess what happened next? Marcus Smith came on, and guess what? He scored a try for England. Very good visionary piece of work. He running through the middle and put it right under the post. So that was a 7-pointer for England, and they were back in the game. Caleb Muntz was having a great day, I thought. He was kicking really well for the post, got conversions and penalties over, but he was also good in open play. His strategic kicking was very good, and he kept Fiji on the front foot. He doesn't appear to be one of those guys that's a superstar in rugby, Caleb Muntz. He's a very steady, very good player, and he really knows what he's doing in terms of game management. Give him 5 stars for yesterday's performance, that's for sure. So it was 20 points to 15 after Marcus Smith had scored that try, and England were in the hunt. They had 20 minutes left in the game. Were they going to be able to finish strongly? And this was going to be one of the key indicators as we move into the Rugby World Cup. Can England chase a game? Now, of course, their confidence hasn't been very high in this entire warm-up series. They've been under a lot of pressure both on the field and off the field. And of course, with Owen Farrell and Vinipola's cases with red cards, that's been taking up a lot of energy from this team. And I think it's showed on the field of play as well as in their coaching outfit. But nevertheless, we've got to give our hats off to Fiji in this game, because they kept the pressure on. They stuck to their strategy, what was working. The box kicks and the pick and go from the mauls was having a big impact. And every time one of the big Fijian forwards picked up that ball and ran another 4 or 5 metres, one of his brothers was there, and they would continue the trend upfield, and that was giving England a lot of hard time. They were very effective when it came to that, because they were conscious that England's tackling was under the microscope, and the English players had to be very careful as they were tackling those Fijian forwards, making those dynamic runs up the middle of the field. Now, around about the 60th minute mark, Fiji broke, and they were heading towards the English goal line again, and Johnny May stepped in with a fantastic try-saving tackle. And I had to make sure I included that in my review video of this game, because it was an extraordinary piece of defense from Johnny May. So he scored a good try, he did that try-saving tackle, but was it going to be enough to save England on the day? In the 60th minute, Caleb Muntz got another penalty for Fiji, put them out to 23-15. But just a minute later, Joe Marchant went over for England. And it was a very good try for England. They really put their different phases together, and Marchant got over, big guy coming on in the midfield. So a good try for England, and the scores were back to 23-22, and this was turning into a cliffhanger at Twickenham. A lot of the crowd wanted to see Fiji win this game. There was a lot of Fijians in the crowd, and of course everybody knew the history that Fiji had never beaten England. So 23-22 with just 10 minutes to go, and Danny Kerr had come on for Mitchell as a replacement, and from the kickoff from the Fijians, Danny Kerr made a horrendous mistake by dropping the ball. And it was from that mistake from Kerr that Fiji started to put a couple of phases of play together, and just 2 minutes later, Kuravoli went over for a magnificent try for Fiji, and Caleb Muntz did the extras with the conversion, and Fiji were out to 30 points to 22 with just a few moments to go. An unassailable lead for Fiji, and the crowd was so excited. I think everybody that was there, even some of the England supporters, were giving the Fijians a lot of praise yesterday. It was good to see. So in the dying moments of the game, England tried to press towards the Fijian line. They went down the right-hand side of the field, but the ball was kicked out, and then Fiji got control to end the game. And a historic win to Fiji over England at Twickenham, 30 points to 22. So it was the first time in the 119-year history of the Fijian Rugby Union that they'd beaten England in a rugby test. And what extraordinary scenes we saw after the game. And I've got to say, there was one moment there, and it's a moment that I noticed across the weekend so far from all of the rugby games. The passionate unity within the teams, and Fiji got together as a team at the end of that game, and they stood around and they sang a Fijian song together. And it just showed to me the unity. We saw this on Friday as well with South Africa singing their national anthem, and it was something that stuck out for me over the weekend in terms of the passion and the unity in some of these teams. And I thought that was something the All Blacks were missing on Friday night when they were singing their national anthem, as well as during the haka process. So Fiji, an amazing win against England, 30 points to 22. If we weren't taking them seriously, which we already were, then everybody's got to step up and watch what this Fijian team can do at the Rugby World Cup. I was really impressed with their replacements that came on. I thought that might be another area where they might be a little bit weak, but they continued to keep the power on in the forwards. And despite both teams making several mistakes because of the slippery ball conditions, Fiji had the better of it in the scrums in particular. So what a game it was, a historic moment for Fiji rugby, and not only the fans in the stadium, but Fijian rugby fans across the world would have been celebrating and delighted at watching Fiji have this historical moment at Twickenham. So what now for England? Well, at the press conference afterwards, Steve Borthwick showed his continual lack of energy and excitement, and just basically saying we didn't play very well. Courtney Laws was also the same. And if you'd watched the videos of some of the All Blacks that were interviewed after their loss to the Springboks, you would have seen a different feeling from the players, and looking at the positives of this and how they can go away and improve it, even though they got thrashed by the Springboks on Friday night. There doesn't seem to be that energy at all within the English camp, and whether Borthwick is responsible for that or he's accounting to that situation, it's very, very obvious that there's not a lot of unity. They talk about the boys together, the boys doing this, we will do this, but it's not translating into action on the pitch. And given that Argentina thrashed Spain yesterday by 60 odd points, and of course we can't write too much into that. Spain is not a rugby playing nation at this level, of course, but they would have got a lot of combinations going from that game, Argentina, and they scored a lot of tries. And they would have seen what happened with Fiji against England yesterday, and they'll be going in super pumped up to play that first game against England. So England have got 2 weeks to try and turn this around, and we've been saying that in every video after an England game for the last weeks, haven't we? England have got another week to turn this around, and they're just not doing it. Yesterday I saw errors from Freddie Stewart that were pretty unusual for him under the high ball in particular. Yes, of course it was wet, slippery conditions, but he put most of the high balls down yesterday. Tuilagi and Lawrence weren't making that really big impression in the midfield. And again, Radradra and his counterparts in the Fiji team were absolutely explosive in defence. And as we always see from Fiji, some massive hits going in there yesterday. But it would have been more concerning from Borthwick's point of view that the forwards weren't winning clean ball, and it wasn't able to then give the backs an opportunity to run. Ford was under a lot of pressure at times yesterday, so his kicking during the field of play was off, and he was making several mistakes in that area. Marcus Smith was a shining light. He came on and scored that try, but he also brings with him some vision, some energy, some positive vibe into that English team, and I can't say that for most of the players. There were a lot of good players yesterday for Fiji. Drua Sesisi, Ravu Tavada, Radradra was also very big. I think Lamani has to look at his distribution speed from the back of the maul in the scrum. He was getting caught there at halfback. Caleb Muntz was absolutely solid for Fiji at their number 10. And Naya Salivu, who scored that fantastic try and had that other one disallowed, was also very, very good as captain yesterday for Fiji. Their forwards were outstanding, I thought, particularly in the pick and go yesterday, and that's where they really won this game, I feel, against England. They were making huge meters up the middle every time they put in different surges and different phases of play. And unfortunately, probably because of some of the conditions yesterday, we didn't see that ignited Fijian backline being able to break through the English defence on a regular basis. We saw it every now and again, but I look forward to the Fijians getting some dry grounds in France where they're going to be able to show not only that forward power and strength, but they're going to be able to show that typical athleticism and visionary play that only Fiji can bring to the game of rugby. So that's it, an excellent game yesterday from Fiji, well deserved of their win against England, and let's hope that they can continue this kind of form during the Rugby World Cup, which I'm sure that they can. Now, in closing today's video, I'm going to put the entire Fiji team up that was playing in the game yesterday, all 23 of them. Here's their names. I can't pronounce half of them, but I want to give them some credit because they all played extremely well yesterday, and they played as a united team in beating England at Twickenham. So in closing today's video, I'm going to make sure we see all of those players that were involved in making history yesterday for Fiji at Twickenham. So there we go, an historic win by Fiji against England yesterday at Twickenham. The first time in their 119-year history that Fiji has beaten England in a rugby international. A fantastic achievement, and well done to everybody associated with this Fiji team. Now, don't forget, I'm going to be here through the last warm-up game today, France versus Australia, and then into the Rugby World Cup. Lots of videos coming up in the next couple of weeks about my thoughts around the Rugby World Cup. I'm going to be looking at the pool games and telling my version of what I think's going to happen in France. So the way to keep up to date with all of that is to hit that subscribe button. Remember, it doesn't cost you anything, but it helps me out enormously. And don't forget to give this video a like and a thumbs up, and tell all your mates about the Kiwi guy in Mexico that's making videos about rugby. I'd be very, very appreciative of that. Okay, until next time, everyone, stay safe, stay well, and remember, enjoy your rugby. See you soon. Bye for now.